I stood in the driveway, clutching a shiny new set of keys, while my mother, 500 miles away, laughed on yet another family vacation I wasn't invited to. She had no clue what I just set in motion. No inkling that within a day, her entire world would come crashing down. 7 years ago, she made a choice. Tomorrow, she'd face the consequences. Stick around until the end. I'll share my candid take on whether Sarah was in the right, or if she went too far. If you've ever felt like the outcast, the scapegoat, or the kid sacrificed for someone else's harmony, smash that like button and subscribe, because this is the tale of how I learned that outsmarting a manipulative parent requires a calculated, long-term strategy. My name is Sarah, and this is how I reclaimed my home and my peace of mind. When my father passed away, the world beneath me shifted. I was 15, and the silence in our house was overwhelming. But what stunned me more was how fast that silence was filled. Dad was precise, a self-made success, and his will was a fortress of legal clarity. Since he and Mom were never married, he left everything, the main house, investments, rental properties, to me, his only child. Not a penny to her. The catch was the vesting age, 21. Until then, a strict trust managed it all, keeping her hands off, no matter how hard she fought to contest it. In those chaotic early weeks, her grief quickly turned to scheming. Just 2 months after Dad's death, a man named Marcus and his 2 adult kids, Ethan and Lila, moved into my house. Marcus was brash, controlling, and territorial, everything Dad wasn't. Mom, then 45, was desperate to hold onto him, willing to sacrifice anything or anyone to maintain her shiny new blended family. And the easiest person to toss aside, me. The air in the house grew heavy with unspoken resentment. I wasn't just ignored, I was irrelevant, a bothersome obstacle to her perfect family picture. The favoritism toward Marcus's kids was glaringly obvious. Ethan and Lila were always included in family trips. I was left behind. I'll never forget standing in the kitchen doorway, overhearing Mom plan a lavish beach getaway with Marcus and his kids. When she noticed me, her face morphed into a sickly sweet mask of pity. "Oh, sweetheart," she purred, her voice thick with fake warmth. "Wouldn't you rather spend the weekend with your dad's parents? They miss you so much." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a dismissal dressed up as concern. Go be unhappy with the family who actually cares about you, because you don't belong in the idyllic life I'm crafting here. That became the refrain of my teenage years. You'd be better off elsewhere. The real battle was with Marcus. He was self-employed, a fancy way of saying he leached off Mom's desperation for a living. He saw himself as the king of the house and loved throwing his weight around. One night, when I was 17, he tried to impose a curfew on me. I stared him down, my voice trembling with fury, and reminded him whose house he was in. I didn't say it often, but when I did, it hit like a sledgehammer. "This is my house, Marcus. You're just Mom's guest." The fight was ugly. Marcus shouted. Mom sobbed her rehearsed martyr tears, begging me to keep the peace. The arguments were destroying her harmony. Weeks later, she sat me down, looked into my eyes, held my hand, and with a voice heavy with staged sorrow, told me I had to leave. "Sarah, I love you, honey," she murmured, gripping my hand. "But Marcus will leave if I don't give him control. I need stability, and this fighting, it's breaking my heart." She didn't choose to remove the unemployed man causing the chaos. She chose to remove the daughter whose rightful ownership threatened his fake authority. At 17, I packed one suitcase and walked out the front door of my own inheritance. The pain of that rejection burned deep in my core. My amazing paternal grandparents welcomed me with open arms, turning their guest room into a haven. But I never forgot the sound of that front door slamming behind me. The sound of my mother choosing a stranger over her own daughter. Mom still visited, bringing cookies and staging tearful hugs, always insisting she loved me but needed to keep Marcus happy. She had to play the part of a doting mother for the world, even as she kept me at a distance, her inconvenient secret. The years at my grandparents were my time to plan quietly. They gave me space to study, heal, and grow without the constant emotional warfare. But every birthday felt like a ticking clock. My 21st birthday was the turning point. The trust transferred to my control. making me the sole owner of a significant portfolio, including the house Mom and Marcus were living in. It should have felt like a victory, but it was empty. I had the power, but not the stomach for a messy legal fight with my mother's drama and public tantrums. So I let them stay. I paid the steep property taxes every year, quietly funding their rent-free, lavish lifestyle while I scraped by on student loans and part-time jobs. I told myself I was being mature, biding my time. In truth, years of her passive-aggressive guilt had conditioned me to avoid conflict. For 2 years after turning 21, I let them live there, bankrolling their fairy tale blended family. The constant drain of those taxes started feeling like emotional extortion, not just money, but the price of my silence, a yearly ransom for their comfort. The wake-up call came after college. At 23, I was accepted into a prestigious, costly master's program out of state. Sitting with my financial advisor, the numbers were clear. I had the assets, but to fund the degree without massive loans, I needed steady, liquid income. The house my mother occupied, the one I paid taxes on, could generate enough rent to cover my entire program. That realization hit like ice water. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about my future. My father had left me this opportunity, and I was letting Marcus and his freeloading family steal it because I feared my mother's tears. That weekend, I drove to the house unannounced. I stood across the street, staring at the familiar bay window where I used to read. The house looked pristine, cherished, utterly hijacked. I marched to the door, ready to deliver a formal eviction notice with a legal timeline. But as I raised my hand to knock, I stopped. Why warn them? Why give Mom time to spin a sob story or wield her tears like a weapon? The house was quiet, empty. Then I noticed luggage tags on the shed door. They were off on another family vacation. I called Mom. No answer. No voicemail. Standing there, I realized I had a rare moment of control. I wasn't going to have a conversation that ended with her begging me to sacrifice my education for Marcus's comfort. I was going to protect my investment. The decision was calculated, professional, and final. I called a trusted locksmith from a distant town, explaining I was the sole owner and needed the locks changed immediately. I showed him the deed and tax records, everything in my name. The process was understated but profoundly freeing. The click of the old locks and the sound of new ones being installed felt like years of injustice being sealed away. With the locks changed, I had a clear, laminated eviction notice printed, stating the former occupants had 2 weeks to collect their belongings and leave. I taped it prominently to the front door, ensuring it was legally airtight and impossible to miss. But I wasn't finished. The revenge had to be thorough and bulletproof. Over the next 2 days, I executed phase 2, cutting off their ability to claim the house as their own. I contacted the utility companies as the recorded owner, stopping automatic billing and transferring services to my name. At the post office, I redirected all mail from that address to a temporary P.O. box in another county, ensuring any bills, letters, or fake leases they might try to forge would be intercepted. The most satisfying move was calling the county tax assessor's office. I asked about the property's residential status, casually mentioning I suspected Marcus was using the address fraudulently as his business headquarters for tax breaks. I didn't accuse outright, just asked a question as the owner. I knew it would spark a review, tying Marcus up in red tape for months. It was the perfect, untraceable jab at his fake business empire. I had done it. I hadn't just locked them out. I dismantled their ability to exist at that address, severing their grip on my stolen life. They returned yesterday, and I can only imagine the shock as Marcus fumbled with the old key, Mom waiting impatiently, then the dawning horror as they read the eviction notice. My phone lit up with furious texts from Marcus, demanding to know what I was playing at, and hysterical voicemails from Mom, skipping pleasantries and shrieking about how I could do this after they'd let me stay with my grandparents. I ignored them, letting them stew in the consequences. Today, I drove back because the renovation crew needed access to the backyard. I knew they'd be waiting. I was ready for the confrontation on my terms. Standing in the backyard, eyeing the pricey patio furniture I'd paid taxes for, I heard the back door rattle and slide open. They stormed out, Mom, enraged, Marcus fuming, and Lila pale and shaken. Sarah, how could you? Mom screamed, her voice shrill, marching toward me. You didn't even call. You changed the locks like a criminal. Marcus stepped forward, trying to intimidate. You have no right to do this to us. Your mother lives here. We have rights as tenants. I met his gaze, calm and unshaken, the anger of my 17-year-old self replaced by the clarity of an adult. Actually, Marcus, I have every right, I said evenly, holding the renovation contract steady. I own this house. The deed is in my name. I've paid the taxes every year since I was 21. The damage I saw inside, cracked counters, ruined floors, shows you haven't cared for it. You've paid nothing for rent or utilities for 2 years. You're not tenants. You're squatters. Mom's face crumpled, her anger giving way to her go-to manipulation, tears. She wailed loudly, ensuring Marcus and the neighbors heard. Marcus, fueled by her tears, doubled down. You're disrespecting your mother after all she's done for you. What kind of person are you? The kind who's taking back what's legally and morally mine, I replied, unmoved. I handed Mom the eviction notice, which she barely glanced at. You have 2 weeks. Renovations start in 3. Then came the predictable emotional ploy. Lila, Marcus's 19-year-old daughter, stepped forward, hand on her stomach. Where are we supposed to go? She sobbed. I'm pregnant, Sarah. We can't be homeless. For a moment, the air grew heavy. The old guilt, the instinct to cave to tears, flickered, but I shut it down. I remembered myself at 17, alone on the curb, watching Mom choose Marcus's peace over my stability. I looked at Lila, then Mom, and delivered the final blow. Lila, your situation isn't my responsibility, I said firmly. And Mom, you made your priorities clear 7 years ago when you kicked me out of my own home to keep Marcus happy. You showed me where I stood. I have a master's degree to fund the education Dad intended for me. This house is my asset, not your charity or Marcus's. I took one last look at the defeated trio, their faces twisted in shock, and delivered the final act. The renovation crew is here, I said, pointing to the driveway where a van pulled up. I walked to the back gate, spoke briefly to the foreman, the property's vacated. Install the fencing and for rent sign now, and left without looking back as Mom's hysterical sobbing grew louder, drowned out by the clang of a shovel on concrete. The house was moving forward without them. The aftermath has been chaotic. Mom's side of the family, who I rarely talk to, are vilifying me, calling me a heartless daughter and a cruel landlord for displacing a pregnant girl. But Sarah knows the truth. She let them live rent-free for 2 years after gaining ownership. They chose their cushy life and Marcus's ego over her future. Sarah achieved her goal, reclaiming her inheritance and funding her education. But the cost, displacing Marcus's innocent daughter, leaves a shadow on her victory. So here's where Sarah's story ends, and we face the tough question: was she a hero or a villain? After reading countless stories like this, here's my verdict. Sarah had every legal right to reclaim her house, and her mother absolutely earned the consequences. But she lost her moral edge the moment she let Marcus's pregnant 19-year-old daughter become collateral damage. She didn't owe her mother kindness, but the ruthlessness of her approach was excessive. My final take: legally justified, but morally imperfect. What's your view? Was this a cold-hearted takedown or a rightful reclaiming? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories where entitlement faces its reckoning.